Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. Today, we are talking about how to develop executive presence. And this has come up quite a few times recently. So it was something that we had on the list to cover, but then one of our lovely listeners sent us this message and I'll read it out, and it was absolutely perfect timing. So the message says, can you do an episode on executive presence? It feels nebulous and I would like to know what it is and how we can develop it from your perspective and experience. Thank you so much. So we were like, perfect. We had it on the list. So we will take you through it and give you an insight of what it is and how you can develop one. So Jackie, what is it? What is executive presence?
I think nebulous is a great description of this as a concept, because when people think about executive presence, it's that the way that people tend to recognize it is it's that sense that you see in somebody that they just naturally command the room, that they have this aura, this sense of presence where people will pay attention to them. And it feels a bit mystical and magical sometimes. It feels like some people have got it and some people haven't. And in reality, that is absolutely not the case. When you start to break it down and understand it, then you can really get to the bottom of there are a whole defined set of specific skills that combine to create it. So I think it's, in summary, it's that sense that you get from people where they are the one that is worth listening to, where they get their message heard, where they have trust and credibility that they are a leader worth following. And it's not so much about the kind of what they do, but the way that they go about it that inspires that reaction from other people.
So would you say they're the ones that come across as like the natural leaders, the ones where you look at them and think, wow, they must just have those leadership skills within them, because how will I ever command a room like them?
Yes and no. I think they often are the people that other people would see as natural leaders. But I also feel that there is more to it than that. And often when people talk about presence, they have an assumption, I think, that being able to have that means that they need to be the center of attention. They need to be quite extroverted. They need to speak up at every opportunity. And in reality, those are not the things. It's not about personality factors. It's about the skills that go into it. So some people might have more of those skills. And if they're well developed, you might see those as natural leaders. But there's often a lot of work that goes into building the various skill sets in order to do that in a way that seems effortless and natural.
And I think with that as well, just thinking about that, you think executive presence and you think I'll develop that when I get to C-level or when I get to director level, at least. So it's like, when should you start developing it? Because is it like early on in your career, so that you're building up to those bigger roles? Or when is the best time to start really thinking about it and focusing in on it?
Today, without a doubt, that's always the advice that I would give people is executive presence is not going to be the thing that massively accelerates your career trajectory. But if you lack it, then it can impede you getting to the next level. So, because this is quite a varied skill set and there's quite a lot to it, you definitely are better to start sooner rather than later and to really explore and unpick and understand what goes into it, how can I develop it, and to do that. And I illustrate this by talking about there's a difference between position power, which is the power that you have as a result of the level that you're at and the responsibilities that you have associated with that role, and person power, which is where you have an impact and where people will follow you as a leader purely because of who you are. And you see this naturally within groups where there is no assigned leader, but still somebody is the one that people will look to. And the more that you can demonstrate that ability to influence through ways other than your seniority, the easier it is for people to visualize you in that next level role and to have trust and faith that if they give you that opportunity, you will be able to seamlessly integrate into that next level. So, yeah, definitely start as soon as you can.
Yeah, and I suppose that's perfect advice, isn't it? Get started today, start to understand it, start to figure out what you need to do. And I suppose when we were talking through it and the things that we share in Career Club, you were talking about the components that make that up. So talk us through those key components because I think that'll really help people to understand how they start breaking it down and start to create their own executive presence.
Yeah. So we recently ran a whole masterclass within the Catalyst Career Club on this, and we broke it down literally from top to bottom so that people could start to really unpick and understand the different components. But essentially, there's a study that was done 14 years ago, I think it was now. I feel like it was 2010, but don't hold me to that. And it was looking at what are the components that cause people to respond in that way, to see somebody as having that presence. And in ranking order, they broke down three overall areas. So you've got gravitas, which is that sense of people taking someone seriously, that sense of you speak and I'll listen. And then there was communication, which was all around how somebody articulates themselves, how somebody expresses themselves in a variety of contexts that would happen within leadership roles, but also, crucially, how somebody listens and how somebody picks up communication cues as well. And then there was one that was much smaller, which was appearance. So this is about, does somebody look like you'd expect a leader to look in this context? So this is not about 80s power suits and suited and booted. And you hear that saying of dress for the job you want, but it's more that sense of if you are in a very formal environment, then wearing, if as a woman, if I were to wear something that was quite casual or bright, that might not fit in with people's perception of what the people at the most senior levels would carry themselves in that way. If I were to be a fast growing tech startup, then if I were to wear a tailored dress and a blazer, that would not fit with people's perception of how a leader in that particular environment or space might look. So it's appearance in the sense of, do people see that you carry yourself in a way that you pick up on the cues of what is typical for a leader in that particular context?
Yeah, I've just gone straight back to 80s power suits because I would have absolutely loved to have worked in the 80s and been able to wear a power suit every day for work. But you're totally right. You've got to fit in with the environment. And I suppose that is part of you being or you creating that presence by showing that you fit in, that you're picking up on those cues, that you are aligning with that environment and that organization. So that's a really big part of it, isn't it? And I think sometimes it's wear what you're comfortable in or wear what makes you feel great. Obviously you want to do that, but then it is that suitable for the environment.
It's a really interesting one, appearance. I think of the three components of executive presence, appearance is probably the most controversial because it feels like, haven't we moved on since then? Can't people express themselves and be who they naturally are? And I think you can still stand out. You can still have a sense of personal style, but do that in a way that is fitting the context. And so for me, it's that element of not trying to fit in so much as finding a way that feels true to you. And that's what we talk about so often with clients and on this podcast is finding a way that is true to you, that is also appropriate to the circumstances and to the result that you want to get.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is so important, isn't it, when you start breaking it down and when you look at different leaders and how they progress through their careers, it is usually the thing that underpins everything because you can have the greatest skill set and all of the knowledge in the world. But if you haven't got that executive presence, then you're probably not going to get as far as other people would. I suppose from that aspect, it is really important, isn't it?
It really is. And I think when you start to break down, so gravitas is the most significant component. And this is that element of being taken seriously, of people really getting that you are somebody who is influential, that you are somebody that is worth listening to. So, if we break down some of the aspects that sit under that, you've got things like being able to stay poised under pressure and appear confident, even when your back might be against the wall. So that is a skill set. It might come more naturally to some people, but it is also a skill set of maintaining your emotional regulation at times where you might not naturally feel it. And that is something that people can then give, it gives other people a sense. I remember years ago, one of my team saying to me, if you started to panic, I would know that the shit had really hit the fan. It was that sense of, and I think listening and looking for those signs of, are you enabling other people to feel confident to follow you as a leader? It's that is really key. And it's really important that people feel that they have that sense of security. And that comes from you having that ability to maintain a clear head as well and to be able to think clearly when you're under pressure is so crucial in order to be able to make good decisions in a leadership role. So if you're somebody who, when the pressure is on, you panic and find that difficult, then it is really important to build that skill set of being able to manage your own reaction and regulate yourself and move yourself through that because pressure is only going to get higher the further up the ladder that you go.
Yeah, and that is true, isn't it? So would you say that executive presence can be learned?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the reason why it feels so nebulous is because it's talked of as one thing, the executive presence as a whole. And the assumption, because the people that do it well do tend to make it look effortless, is that it's something that you're either born with or you haven't. And so it's really difficult to know exactly where do you start, what should I do? And the reason that I describe it as being like be more strategic or work on your personal leadership brand is because very often the people that will tell you you need to develop it will find it really difficult to give you actionable advice. So, the first skill that you need to develop if you're going to develop your executive presence is your ability to gain the right feedback that will give you actionable insights, that will give you something that you can take action on in one of those skill sets relating to gravitas or communication, because those are the real key areas that you're going to need to really think about if you want to be perceived as having a greater executive presence.
Yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because they're things that you can start doing straight away on these. You can start almost observing yourself doing those things and make it really intentional that these are the things that you're going to focus on and you're going to become more self-aware in those areas. Because I think with this, self-awareness is absolutely key, isn't it? Because if you lack self-awareness, then it's probably going to be quite difficult to develop executive presence and do it well.
It really is. And one of the most common things that has come out looking at studies is that people don't get given the feedback on how to develop it. And one of the things that's come out from studies into executive presence is that one of the biggest barriers to people developing it is that they're not given feedback that allows them to start to work on specific aspects of it. And this is particularly the case for women and for people of color. So those people who we know from a leadership perspective are underrepresented also then have this challenge that people don't tend to give them the feedback that could help. So you can take ownership, knowing that as an individual, you can take ownership of that. And like you say, you can start to then build your self awareness around the specific aspects that you can then start to take action on. And that is often the biggest challenge because we saw that when we ran the masterclass in the career club was that people, oh, that feels a little bit uncomfortable going and asking people for feedback. And we have a download within the career club with some specific suggestions of questions that people can take and start to gain this insight. And so what happened was that people got to that and they were, oh, that feels a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not sure that I want to go and do that. And it's a case of, okay, you can be comfortable and still stay where you are. Or if you're serious about knowing that this is an area that is going to benefit you to develop, then you can take the goal, ask the question, and work with it.
Yeah, I think you've got to get uncomfortable if you want to progress. Like, I think that is what, after all of the years we've been doing, that's one thing that we've established that if you're feeling comfortable, you're probably not progressing. Give us your top tips then to finish us off on how to develop executive presence.
So, feedback definitely is a really key one. And being that person who will ask those questions around the specifics of how am I or aren't I demonstrating gravitas and communication skills. The second tip that I would give is to really focus on reading the room. So, one of the things with executive presence is that there are behaviors where you can try to have impact by expressing yourself, by communicating, by giving ideas and opinions. When you're doing that, you're not observing and understanding what are the things that are happening for other people, what are other people's emotional reactions or responses in this situation, what are the indicators about what would be influential for those people, what matters to them, what do they care about. And I think people often under prioritize that read the room. And again, that was one that from the workshop that we ran, people, okay, yeah, I can see now how I work with people in their first 90 days. And that's a typical mistake is that people want to make an impression by talking about their own experience, what they bring, how enthusiastic they are, here's my ideas, rather than listening and understanding the context. And the more that they do that, the easier it is because once people feel listened to and understood, then they will be very happy to listen to you. If you're going in there with your thoughts or ideas, then you can miss that context and miss the mark as a result. And that's damaging for your credibility and your leadership reputation if people have been, she just goes a cocked all the time. So yeah, really focus on reading the room would be the second one.
Fab. And is there anything else that you would say is like really important to think about if people are, if this is a priority for people? What else would you say?
So the other one that I would say is to really think about the difference between situational confidence and deeper seated self belief. And that's an episode that we've done before on this podcast. But I think often one of the things that allows people to develop the required level of self awareness, to be okay with being uncomfortable, is when they have that grounded sense of self belief. Because when you have that grounded sense of self belief, if you lack confidence in a particular context, it's not the end of the world. Because if you know that fundamentally you are okay, you have the potential to learn and grow and develop, then if you do one thing badly or try something and it doesn't quite work, it doesn't, you don't make it mean something about you and who you are. And I think very often people will want to work on their confidence, but it's really the self-belief piece. It's that kind of fundamental grounded sense of I'm okay with who I am and I'm okay if that's different to other people, is a real pivotal point for people to be able to develop executive presence. If you are not okay and secure in who you are and secure in your sense of self-worth and self-esteem, then you will tend to come across as showy or as cocky or as lacking authenticity when you're trying to do some of the other things that you might see people do that have a strong executive presence. And that's probably the most common thing that I would say is the difference between people that feel like they're trying to do it but not meeting the mark, and people that are really genuinely doing it, is those people are just completely okay with I am who I am, take me or leave me, and I will adapt to the situation and the context that I'm leading in, but I'm not seeking other people's approval. And I think when you approve of yourself and stop having to seek other people's approval, that is really the foundation that allows you to build all of those other skill sets on top of.
Yeah, and I think that is probably something that people need to really work on as well, isn't it? Because it's not just something you can go, I'm going to start doing this today. And then all of a sudden, other people's opinions of you don't matter anymore. If you're listening and you're thinking, this is definitely something that I need to work on in order to progress in my career, then get in touch, because Jackie's got a range of different ways that you can work with her to develop your executive presence. And if you're thinking that you've got leadership teams that could use that support as well, then we can talk to you about the all of the different workshops and support we provide through Catalyst Careers. So get in touch and we can give you all of the options. And we absolutely love working with our listeners. And as time goes on, we're working with more and more listeners, and it's just amazing. So thank you for all of the support. And as usual, share the podcast with anybody that you think it will help or that might find it useful. And make sure that you rate and review us, because the more you rate and review us, the more people will be able to listen to our lovely voices. And we will be back next week with another episode.
Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50K or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.